how do you estimate the importance of negotiation process? What do you think the key benefits for the Macedonian citizens will be?
Well, I will start answering by question.
Okay.
And the question is, what do people want from their lives, usually? They want good job, they want good schools for children, they want good health system, they want clean air, they want a normal life, right? And so why do so many people leave the country? Because they cannot find this here, right? So they look for it in the West, mostly in the member states of the European Union, just to find this simple,
Answers.
normal life.
Yeah.
Simple answer, normal life. And the life that is not bothered by politics as much as it is here. I think that's why we have this huge migration. And this is what the whole negotiation is about. That's why I think or majority of citizens want to see the country as member of the European Union in the future. They want to see the country member of the European Union in the future. They don't want that citizens one by one become citizens of the European Union by migrating, but rather that EU enters the country and that the country becomes the EU. And this is negotiation. Negotiation is the road.
So it's not actually integration of Macedonia in the EU, but it's bringing EU values and principles in the country.
The way of life, the normal life, as I mentioned, to bring it here in the country. And negotiation is the road leading there. And during negotiations, the country already become de facto member state, even though not entering yet. That means it starts functioning as the EU member state way before it actually becomes member state in the end, because things start changing and the life becomes more normal, and then you have functioning institutions. You have inspections who inspection the food. You have more control of the air system, of the environment. So I think that's the core. What it means negotiating. It means transforming the country into what people want to see, a normal country without the problems that they have to deal with these days.
Yes, but in all this process of implementation and even in the process of negotiations, there are some weaknesses of the Macedonian institutions to provide this. Where do you see the biggest obstacles? In which areas?
Yeah. I would see the biggest weakness, especially in these days, in these past months. I see the weakness of inability of politics to go beyond party and personal interests and look for the state interests. These weeks there is discussion, there is decision being made for the future that will determine the future of the country, and I think I see it as a weakness that the politics, or some politics, cannot go beyond the party politics, doesn't see the strategic importance of the moment, big picture.
The interest of the country.
So the weakness is this polarization, which is painful polarization that you have in society. And I think that this will need to be addressed. I think that politics, because politics creates the division, politics creates polarization, that politicians should unite around strategic goals and bring the country together, because this weakens the country, it weakens the state, it weakens also your negotiating positions. So I think this is the biggest weakness that I see. Of course, concretely, there is always it's about the rule of law,
yes.
Which is always the weakest link in all members, in all candidate countries, but including here. We did see the changes, but I think we need the judiciary is the core. I think citizens need to regain trust in judiciary. Judiciary is important for the trust of the foreign investors to come in. Judiciary is important, the rule of law is important for the whole stability of the country. So we want to see judiciary that is more self-confident, and that is more reluctant, more waterproof to political interference, and also the judiciary that will not self-restrain itself,
yes,
that will not autocorrect itself, but rather that will really get the confidence of doing the rule of law.
You mentioned the rule of law, and when we're talking about that, apparently in our country, in the moment, talking about the current political situation, there are parallel to ongoing processes. On the one hand, there is political reconciliation process of so-called political reconciliation, and on the other, there is implementation of rule of law through the ongoing trials. Do you think it's possible for both of these processes to keep on going without excluding themselves?
Well, the justice should be given time and space to work. And what we've seen recently, that politicians started publicly naming judges and prosecutors, accusing them, threatening them, I think that is worrying. And I hope that judicial institutions will step behind the judges and prosecutors that have been pointed out by politicians. From us, they have our full support because they should be doing their work, and we will always speak against political interference in judiciary, against political pressure on judiciary. Reconciliation, of course, is clearly needed. I spoke earlier about the division in the society, so there is a need for reconciliation. Of course, there is a very thin line between reconciliation and accountability. Yes. I spoke with the two chairwomen of the committee, Ramensky and Alexandrova, and talking to them, I'm convinced that they will find this thin balance between these two.
Won't destroy the path.
Exactly, to do the reconciliation, which is definitely needed, but at the same time to keep the accountability, to keep the rule of law functioning, judiciary functioning. Because
accountability actually was one of the priorities named last summer, in the summer actually, it was this summer. In Macedonia there was a big disappointment when we were placed in the same group with Albania. Not only authorities, but only the citizens thought that, resolving the name issue will be a sufficient step towards starting negotiations with the EU. There were also different opinions between the member states of the EU about this. What's your opinion?
Yeah. Well, two elements I will have. First, you mentioned Albania. I will just mention, I will say one comment. Somehow in the whole region, it seems the whole region has one problem. And this is that everybody thinks that it is better than the rest. And everybody is thinking that, is better than the neighbors.
I mentioned that more in the name issue aspect, not we are satisfying all the criteria, but just like the main thought was that
I understand. I just used that because I hear so many times. Not only here, as I said, it goes for the whole region. Everybody in the region feels the same. When
you're from the region, actually, so
I'm from the region.
You know very well.
Yes, and when the truth is that it's interest of everybody that everybody is successful. If you have stable neighborhood, you're stable as well. If you have instability in the neighborhood, it affects your stability as well. So I think the region should really work together and somehow pull each other up. I think High Representative Mogherini feels very strongly about that. Now about the June decision, well, last June decision, for which I understand that there was some disappointment in the society because of the big steps, as you said, in kind of a big sacrifice that was done by the country with agreeing on the name issue. The ministers did recognize huge changes that were done on the reforms, how the backsliding was U-turned in judiciary. So this was all recognized. At the same time, they thought that more reforms are needed. Yes, you said there were division among the member states, but at the end, I think they all agreed that yes, a huge progress was done. We give conditional opening next June with conditioning with the implementation of the PRESPA agreement, and the second one with the deepening of the reforms. Also, citizens think, and politicians usually use, we have to do this because of EU, we have to do this because of EU. But actually, everything that we are requesting is for the good of the country. I mean, all the reforms that we are doing in judiciary, this is for the good of the citizens. Primarily, citizens want to have reforms. And also, when I'm asked, have we done enough reforms? I mean, I should ask the citizens, because citizens should tell me, should tell us, has enough reforms been done? And if they are happy, then we should be happy as well.
We know we are talking about the Macedonian interest of entering into the EU, but having in mind the latest development of geopolitical events, what's the interest of the European Union itself? And what do you think the integration will have as a signal, the message for the region, for the Europe as well?
Well, the PRESPA agreement itself is a huge message and huge lesson for the region, but also for Europe. You know, in this agreement, you see the commitment, you see determination, you see the courage, you see how the country or people in the country are able to put the interests of the country first, and not the party and personal interests. So these are the messages for the region. Yes, there are difficult problems that each of the countries has, but even if the problem was there for so long, there is a possibility to solve it if you have all these elements in place. That's for the region, but also for Europe. Europe is also confronted with challenges recently.
You actually have a struggle of political concepts and ideologies in the EU and between the member states. On the one hand, we have some authorities and leaderships of some countries who are promoting European values, democratic standards and principles, and on the other, there are some who are openly, directly against them. So, are you worried about this?
Yes, you're right, and the next European elections will be an indication how the Europe is evolving. And I think it would be good to have that courage, determination that we have seen in PRESPA agreement, also among European politicians when dealing with these challenges. You know, in Europe, the problem that Europe has is that our citizens were made to believe that Europe cannot handle these problems, these challenges that came recently: migration, terrorism, financial crisis. People start thinking that EU doesn't have the answers, that national states have the answers.
There was the trust in the...
They lost the trust in institutions providing the answers and went back into the national states, and they thought that only national states can provide the answers, that we had the walls coming up and the lack of solidarity emerging and so on. And this has to be challenged. You know, with the politicians now going into European elections, I think will be challenged, because every member state is so much stronger within larger European Union. If European Union is strong, if it's strong in defending its values in external relations, if it's strong in defending values internally, in defending external borders, then also member states will be strong. Each one on its own will not survive. So yes, I think we need this. We hope to see that determination. I hope to see determination, courage also, to bet everything on this
card.
On this card, on the card, and the card is principles and values of the core of the EU. That's what the core is. You know, solidarity, human rights, democracy, rule of law, transparency, and everything. This is the core. If European Union is not trade union, it's not bureaucratic union. This is what is the glue of the European Union, and I hope to see our politicians also be as courageous as we've seen between the two countries here. But just to answer your question, what's our interest? I think we do have interest. Every country, every new member that brings the commitment, trust, and shares these values that I just mentioned before, strengthens the family. And of course, that's our interest, because we become stronger with each member. We become stronger internally, but also externally.
Mr. Ambassador, thank you very much.
No, thank you very much for giving me the chance.
Thank you for the messages.
Thanks.